Since you started listening to this sentence, Lego just manufactured another 6,000 plastic bricks. I mean, they produce over 2 million every single hour.
Which is just a massive scale. It's 36,000 a minute, actually.
Right. But a deep dive into their corporate strategy reveals a company that is constantly on the brink of, well, breaking its own universe. We are looking at a stack of business case studies, sustainability reports, and digital strategy playbooks today, all dedicated to a brand sitting in millions of living rooms right now.
Yeah, but almost nobody truly understands the immense behind-the-scenes mechanical friction required to keep this company alive. And that sheer manufacturing scale is the exact reason their survival strategy is so critical to study right now.
Exactly. Because what we're looking at in these sources is the story of a company that had to repeatedly survive near-death experiences. And they did it by completely dismantling and reimagining what a toy actually is.
They've been forced to shift from selling isolated plastic objects to orchestrating this massive, connected, multi-layered customer experience.
And that is our mission for you today. We are tracking how Lego transformed from a company selling simple bricks into a pioneer of what these business cases term SustAInnovation.
SustAInnovation. That's such an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, highly volatile blend of sustainability, artificial intelligence, and cutting-edge digital innovation. We're going to explore how they turned a purely physical product into a completely immersive ecosystem. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to understand how Lego is leaping into AI and green chemistry today, we actually have to look at the core operating system they built, how they managed to completely break it, and how they had to frantically engineer a fix.
Right. And finding that operating system means looking at the limitations of their origins. So think back to 1932.
Right in the middle of the Great Depression.
Exactly. A Danish carpenter named Ulrik Kirk Christensen pivoted to making wooden toys. Yo-yos, pull-along animals, just to keep his workshop afloat.
And he named the company Lego, which comes from the Danish words leg god, meaning play well.
Yeah, he also hung a sign in his workshop stating, "Only the best is good enough." And that obsession with quality was foundational for them. But wood as a medium had a hard ceiling. I mean, it splinters, it warps with humidity, and tragically for his warehouse, it burns.
Yeah, a massive fire in 1960 pushed them entirely out of wooden tours, but they had already been experimenting with plastic injection molding machines by then, right?
They had, yeah. And looking at the timeline, the true strategic breakthrough wasn't just switching materials. It happened in 1958 under Ole's son, Gottfried Kirk Christensen, when they patented the stud and tube coupling system.
The 1958 patent, that fundamentally changed the trajectory of the whole business.
Oh, absolutely. Before 1958, early plastic bricks just stacked loosely on top of each other. If you bumped a table, the whole model just shattered.
Which is incredibly frustrating for a kid.
Completely. So the 1958 patent introduced those little tubes inside the bottom of the brick. When pressed onto the studs of another brick, it created a highly specific friction fit. Lego actually coined the term clutch power for this.
Clutch power. I love that term. So it wasn't just a physical toy anymore. They basically created an interface standard.
Yes. A brick manufactured in 1958 perfectly interlocks with a brick manufactured this morning.
That is wild when you think about it. Every time a parent bought a new set, it didn't replace the old set. It increased the combinatorial value of the pieces a kid already owned. So Lego was basically acting like a Silicon Valley software company decades before Silicon Valley even did.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. Because they didn't just build a product, they built an operating system where every new set was just an app that increased the value of the network.
They unlocked platform logic. And for a long time, the scaling was seamless. I mean, they added minifigures in 1978, which added a whole storytelling layer to the construction platform.
But then we hit the late 90s.
Yeah, as you move into the late 1990s and early 2000s, that operating system violently crashed.
Yeah.
Lego suffered its first financial loss ever in 1998, and by 2003, their revenues had plummeted by 30%.
They were bleeding cash, just hovering right on the edge of bankruptcy. And the sources show a company in complete panic mode at this point. They were acting like a scattered lifestyle brand.
Oh, they were everywhere, expanding into children's apparel, making watches.
Attempting to operate theme parks globally without any experienced partners, but the real damage was happening inside the factory line, wasn't it?
That's where the real crisis was. The designers started creating these overly complex, highly specialized pieces.
Yeah, you buy a set, and it would feature a massive single-molded dragon wing or like a specialized spaceship hull that you couldn't really recombine into a normal house or a car.
Exactly. They were cannibalizing their own platform mechanics. Let's look at the actual business mechanics of that decision. A standard 2x4 Lego brick costs fractions of a cent to produce, right?
Because the injection mold just runs 204/7.
Right, churning out millions of identical units. But when a designer decides a new kit needs a unique, specialized piece, the factory has to engineer a custom steel mold, and that can cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Plus, they have to halt the production lines, swap the molds out, run a limited batch, and manage the logistics of storing that totally unique inventory.
It's a huge mess. By the early 2000s, they had inflated their parts catalog to over 14,000 unique brick shapes. They were destroying their profit margins on factory retooling costs alone.
14,000, that's nuts. So it took a new CEO in 2004, Jørgen Vig Knudstorp, to execute a hard reset.
He had to step in and stop the bleeding. He slashed the parts catalog in half, immediately saving money on the factory floor. He sold off the theme parks to a specialized operator.
He brought the entire corporate focus violently back to the core standard brick.
But he didn't just shrink the company. He realized that selling standard bricks in a vacuum just wasn't enough anymore. They had to build a larger experience layer on top of that platform, leaning heavily into licensed intellectual property.
Right, because he recognized that the cultural relevance of the physical brick required external context. They had launched Star Wars sets in 1999. That was their first licensed property.
And despite massive internal resistance about introducing conflict or, war to the brand, it was a huge financial success.
So Knudstorp really weaponized that strategy. He brought in Harry Potter and other pop culture touchstones. He anchored the physical building system to the stories consumers already loved.
It was brilliant.
But here's my question for you. If the physical brick was their absolute saving grace in 2004, the thing that pulled them back from the brink of total collapse, why take the massive risk of messing with it today?
What do you mean?
Well, I see them pushing into digital screens, video games, and artificial intelligence. It feels like a massive distraction from the tactile platform that saved them.
Well, the physical brick cannot survive in a vacuum while the entire consumer landscape shifts to digital. I mean, younger demographics demand interactive, tech-driven feedback loops.
So you're saying they had to adapt or die?
Pretty much. If Lego ignored the digital reality of their users, they risked becoming a purely nostalgic, obsolete relic. They had to bridge the gap between hands-on, tactile play, and digital innovation. This is a strategy the case studies refer to as fluid play.
Okay, so fluid play is the attempt to seamlessly merge the physical and the digital. But looking at their digital track record, it's littered with expensive landmines.
Oh, absolutely.
Take Lego Universe. They poured millions into developing a massively multiplayer online game to compete in the digital space. They managed to attract 2.3 million players, which sounds like a massive user base, but they completely shut it down in 2012.
Because digital reach doesn't automatically translate to a viable business model. Lego Universe collapsed because of the massive overhead of server maintenance and moderation required for a children's online game.
Right, you have to keep it safe.
Exactly. And that was paired with an inability to convert enough of those 2.3 million free players into paying monthly subscribers. The digital economics just imploded.
And more recently, they stumbled with an augmented reality app called VidYo. You had to scan physical tiles to make music videos.
Yeah, the user interface on that was clunky, the technology was highly temperamental, and it completely failed to resonate with users.
But looking at the digital strategy documents, a very clear pattern separates their expensive failures from their massive successes. The digital products that actually generate value for Lego seem to follow a strict rule. They never try to replace the physical brick.
What's fascinating here is how that rule dictates their modern digital portfolio. Look at the Lego Builder app.
Yeah, I have seen that one.
It doesn't offer a virtual world to play in. It offers 3D, rotatable, interactive instructions for physical sets. It even includes a Build Together feature, allowing multiple family members to use their own devices to collaboratively build a single physical model.
That is smart. Or consider Bricklink Studio. Lego acquired a secondary fan marketplace and elevated its 3D CAD design software.
Right, so adult builders use it to engineer hyper-complex models digitally. They ensure structural integrity before ordering the exact physical parts to build them in the real world.
We also have to look at the sheer scale of Lego Fortnite. They partnered with Epic Games to build a massive digital survival game. But the business loop is just brilliant.
How so?
Playing the free digital game drives intense desire for the newly released physical Lego Fortnite sets. The digital realm is essentially operating as a highly immersive marketing engine for the tactile product.
It feeds right back into the physical break.
Exactly. But stepping into the digital frontier means colliding with the bleeding edge of technology. And right now, that is artificial intelligence. The sources detail some incredible backlash Lego faced in early 2024 regarding AI.
Oh yeah, it was a very public reckoning.
Mhm.
Lego posted a seemingly innocent quiz on their website featuring a character from their Ninjago line. But the fan community, which is hyper-observant, instantly noticed anomalies.
Right. One Lego ninja was wearing a headband from a completely different competitor's Japanese anime property.
And more glaringly, the character's hands were severely distorted and misshapen. It bore all the hallmarks of a bad AI hallucination.
And then, just weeks later, an official ad promoting a collaboration with the Mercedes Formula One team featured a Lego version of Lewis Hamilton standing next to cherry blossom trees.
And the tree branches were physically impossible, just floating in midair. And Hamilton's jacket was covered in illegible, AI-generated scribbles.
The backlash from the fan community was immediate. The co-creator of the Ninjago line even took to social media to call the images lousy.
Yeah, Lego quickly pulled the images and issued a formal apology. They stated, "We have a clear policy not to use generative AI to create Lego content. We fundamentally believe in the wonder and power of human creativity."
Okay, I hear their apology about human creativity, but honestly, looking at these sources, I am a bit skeptical.
Really? Why?
Well, generative AI is cheap, fast, and infinitely scalable. So aren't they just issuing a corporate PR apology because they got caught cutting corners to save marketing dollars?
The apology might have PR elements, sure, but the rejection of AI actually aligns directly with the mechanical constraints of their operating system. Remember the 1932 motto, "Only the best is good enough."
Right.
The entire Lego empire is built on absolute, uncompromising physical precision. A standard Lego brick is manufactured to a tolerance of 10 micrometers.
10 micrometers. That is a fraction of the width of a human hair.
Exactly. That mathematical precision is the only reason a brick from 1958 maintains clutch power with a brick molded today. So when you introduce generative AI into your marketing, a technology that inherently hallucinates, that creates distorted hands and impossible floating geometry, you are broadcasting visible flaws.
Oh, I see. You are visually undermining the core brand promise of micrometer precision.
Exactly. It breaks the fundamental rule of the brand.
So they are culturally and mechanically locked into the physical perfection of the brick. But that exact uncompromising need for physical perfection is what makes their next frontier, sustainability, their hardest challenge in a century.
This is the sus part of SustAInnovation.
Right. Lego consumes 100,000 metric tons of plastic annually to manufacture those 110 billion bricks. And the vast majority of those bricks are made of a thermoplastic polymer called ABS.
Acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. It is a petroleum-based plastic, and it is the mechanical secret behind clutch power.
How does it work?
Well, at a molecular level, ABS is an amorphous polymer. When it is injected into a mold and cools, it shrinks at a highly predictable, incredibly consistent rate. That predictable cooling is what allows Lego to hit that 10 micrometer tolerance.
So it's perfectly reliable.
Exactly. The molecular structure of ABS also provides the perfect blend of rigidity to hold a shape and slight elasticity to grip another brick without shattering. But the environmental math is just brutal. It requires 4.4 pounds of raw petroleum oil to produce just 2.2 pounds of Lego bricks.
Yeah, being tethered to petroleum is a massive liability for them. So Lego publicly sets incredibly aggressive targets, 100% sustainable materials by 2032 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050.
They pour hundreds of millions of dollars into a sustainable materials center, testing thousands of alternative plastics.
And in 2021, they unveil what looks like the ultimate silver bullet, the Bottles to Bricks initiative. They announce a breakthrough using RPT, which is recycled polyethylene terephthalate.
Right. They figured out how to grind down discarded plastic water bottles and injection mold them into Lego bricks.
And it generated phenomenal press coverage. I mean, a major corporate polluter turning landfill waste into educational toys. It sounds perfect.
It was a massive PR win.
But here's where it gets really interesting. By late 2023, after releasing prototypes and securing all those PR wins, Lego completely abandoned the project. They scrapped the entire recycled bottle initiative.
They walked away because the molecular physics of RPT failed the clutch power test.
It just didn't work.
Right. Unlike ABS, PET plastic is semi-crystalline. When you melt it and it cools in the mold, it shrinks unpredictably. You instantly lose that 10-micrometer tolerance.
Oh, what?
Furthermore, the recycled plastic was simply too soft. To force the RPT bricks to click together and hold, engineers had to add various strengthening compounds and impact modifiers.
Which kind of diluted the purity of the recycling effort anyway.
Exactly.
But even worse than the chemical additives was the manufacturing reality. Because when LEGO engineers ran a life cycle carbon analysis on the RPT process, the results were completely disastrous.
Because changing the chemical makeup of the plastic changes the thermodynamics of the factory. The RPT required entirely different melting temperatures, vastly higher injection pressures, and massive new cooling and drying systems.
So to make the recycled bottles work, LEGO would have had to rip out and replace the manufacturing machinery in every factory globally.
Every single one.
Yeah.
And the carbon emission spike from manufacturing and shipping all that new heavy industrial equipment would have resulted in higher total carbon emissions over the life cycle than just continuing to drill for new petroleum to make ABS.
That is wild. LEGO's head of sustainability, Tim Brooks, compared it to trying to make a bicycle out of wood rather than steel.
It just fundamentally doesn't work.
It's like trying to pour the foundation of a 100-story skyscraper using a slightly softer, eco-friendly mix of concrete. The individual bricks might look totally fine sitting on a desk, but the overarching mechanical system built on top of that foundation becomes mathematically unstable.
Exactly. If a kid steps on a brick and it shatters, or if a massive model collapses under its own weight, the 1958 promise is destroyed.
So LEGO chose to protect the platform mechanics, even if it meant absorbing a massive public relations hit for abandoning the recycling project.
They realized a sustainable brick that lacks clutch power isn't a LEGO brick at all. But abandoning RPE doesn't mean abandoning the 2032 deadline. They are just pivoting from the search for a single miracle plastic to a highly diversified portfolio approach.
Right, like they've successfully integrated plant-based polyethylene derived from sustainably sourced sugarcane.
Yes, and they use this softer bioplastic for all their flexible pieces. So the leaves, trees, and dragon wings in a modern set are literally made from plants.
They are also heavily leveraging the circular economy. They launched the LEGO Replay program, allowing users to box up unwanted bricks, print a free shipping label, and send them back.
Then LEGO sorts and cleans them and distributes them to children's charities. Because ABS plastic is essentially indestructible, the lowest carbon action you can take is simply ensuring the brick never enters a landfill.
And on the industrial supply chain side, they are investing in direct air capture technology. They partnered with a Swiss firm called Climeworks to literally vacuum carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to offset the emissions they cannot currently eliminate.
They have accepted that decarbonizing a petroleum-based toy is a grinding, element-by-element process, not an overnight PR victory.
So, synthesizing all of this, we have the physical brick operating as an uncompromising mechanical core. We have the digital layer acting as a companion tool to amplify the building process. And we have the grueling material science struggle to decouple that physical brick from petroleum. But reading through these strategy playbooks, there is a recurring theme here. None of the green chemistry or digital app development matters if LEGO fails to orchestrate the ultimate driver of their survival. And that is the customer community.
And that orchestration is the true execution of sustained innovation. LEGO realized that surviving the 21st century meant moving beyond manufacturing boxes of plastic. They had to transition their consumers into active stakeholders.
Yes, and the most potent demographic they activated were the AFOLs, adult fans of LEGO.
They stopped viewing these highly dedicated adult fans as just a niche consumer base and started weaponizing them as strategic R&D assets.
The mechanics of the LEGO Ideas platform illustrate this perfectly. Anyone can use digital CAD software to design a custom, hyper-complex LEGO set and upload the concept to a community voting platform.
And if the community rallies and a design hits 10,000 verified votes, LEGO's internal design team reviews it.
And if it passes their structural standards?
They manufacture it as an official set, and the fan designer receives 1% of the total net sales.
If we look closely at the business mechanics of that platform, it completely eliminates traditional market risk. A fan does the design labor for free using a digital tool. The community acts as a massive focus group, voting to guarantee demand.
By the time LEGO commits to casting a single piece of new plastic or printing a box, they already have 10,000 guaranteed buyers.
Wow.
We connect this to the bigger picture. The co-creation model eliminates overproduction. They never manufacture thousands of sets that sit unwanted on retail shelves before being dumped into a landfill.
Hmm.
It fuses the digital platform, the physical product, and a highly sustainable zero-waste business model into one continuous loop.
So, whether you are managing a corporate team, building a personal brand, or trying to stay relevant in a shifting industry, the takeaway here is massive. Lego stopped viewing you as the terminal endpoint for a piece of plastic.
Exactly.
They provided the digital tools to design, they built the social infrastructure to vote, and they functionally cut you into the profits. They engineered a system where their customers are structurally incentivized to ensure the company's survival.
They transformed passive consumption into active co-creation.
So let's do a rapid-fire recap of the mechanics we've pulled from these sources. Lego survived total collapse by radically shrinking their factory costs and refocusing on the mechanical friction of the standard brick.
They navigated the digital transition by using software to enhance the tactile build rather than replace it.
And they rigidly rejected AI to protect their reputation for micrometer precision.
Meanwhile, they are currently enduring the brutal physics of decarbonizing an oil-based platform without losing clutch power.
And they are executing all of this by outsourcing their R&D risk to an incredibly passionate fan base. So what does this all mean?
I think it highlights a very profound tension. Lego constructed a global empire by promising permanence. They engineered petroleum bricks that never degrade, designed to perfectly interlock with a system from 1958 forever. The permanence was the magic. Yet, to survive the realities of the modern economy and the climate crisis, they are having to find the courage to completely deconstruct and re-engineer the chemical, digital, and operational foundations of that success. It poses a vital question for you listening right now. What is the permanent, unbreakable plastic in your own career or industry?
Oh, that is a great question.
What is that foundational rule, that core assumption you rely on, that you believe can never be altered? Because if Lego can find the institutional courage to literally rethink the molecular structure of its iconic brick, isn't it time you analyze which foundational rules in your own life are actually holding you back, just waiting to be rebuilt?
That is exactly the kind of question we want to leave you with. Thank you for taking this deep dive into the sources with us. It has been incredible unpacking the mechanics, the missteps, and the mastery of this platform. Keep questioning those unbreakable rules, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Civilization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.